Hello. I just wanted to tell you all about this poster here, which is up behind me. I bought this, as best my memory serves, in 1980, and I think it was $10, which was a lot of money back then. And it's all Australian parrots, lorikeets, and cockatoos put out by the National Parks and Wildlife Service. And I had that up in my bedroom for years and years, and somehow I've managed to keep it over all the intervening years. So it's almost 40 years old. I actually got it laminated just yesterday and decided to put it back up. But when I got it out, it just made me think, well, I wonder how many of these birds I've actually seen in that intervening time, because at the time when I got it, I'd only ever seen a couple. So I just sort of go through. If you're interested in birds, you'll be interested in this, and who isn't? And you should be if you're not. And it's funny looking at the pictures now, like the scale is appalling. You know, the white cockatoo there is almost the same size as a palm cockatoo. It's just crazy. But the artwork's not actually that bad, but they could have done the relative scale better. And also, it's interesting. It's just as the science has moved on, a lot of the birds that people used to think were different species, these are now these two bluebonnets, different races of the same species. They do actually have the red-collared lorikeet and the rainbow lorikeet as a separate, same species, separate race, but people used to think of them as separate species. So anyway, I just thought I'd go through, and of course the white-tailed black cockatoo is now known to be two different species, the Carnaby's and Bordens or Bowdens, I don't know how to pronounce it, over in Western Australia. So anyway, these are the ones that I've seen in the wild. So yellow-tailed black cockatoos, first saw them actually down in Victoria, I think, but we have them all around here where we live, and I heard one just about 5 minutes ago, which was really good. One night last year we had about 40 of them roosting for 3 nights in a row. The trees around us, it was brilliant. Red-tailed black cockatoos, we do see them here, well, not right here, but in the Toowoomba area, and throughout the up northern Queensland coast and the interior of Australia, because they're famous for following rain around. White cockies, well, pretty well everyone's seen them. I even saw them in Brisbane landing outside our front house. They are around here. They've come down to my bird feeding table once or twice. This is a pretty comical picture here. I should probably get in a bit closer, shouldn't I? The glossy black cockatoo here. That's not a very good picture of him. But we do have them around here. It's really exciting that we have them here, one of Australia's rarest birds. So I've planted a whole lot of she oaks for them, which are all about knee high now. So I don't know, it'll take a few years before they're ready to give them some seeds. Palm cockatoos, never seen them. I'd love to go right up north to see them. Okay, so well, there's 2 species of these guys now, but the white-tailed black cockatoos, but they're over in Western Australia. I've never been there. Eclectus parrots. Now I've seen them in captivity, and they are really, really loud. Bloke used to live up the road from us in Toowoomba here in the early 80s, had some aviaries, and I was up actually in the Torres Strait just over 10 years ago on an island where these were, and I just didn't see any, and I looked and looked but didn't see any. They came and went between that island, Dwan Island, and New Guinea. Gang cockatoos, I've never seen them in the wild either, which is a bit frustrating. I have seen them in at Taronga Zoo and also at Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary, and they're actually a bit bigger than I expected, a bit more kind of solid. Corellas, yeah, well, lots of them, millions of them out at the Toowoomba Showgrounds. We see them flying over here where we are. We're about half an hour north of Toowoomba. They used to visit my feeding table when we lived in town. Major Mitchells, I saw them out in the wild, out in Western Queensland at Quilpie, and I'll never forget one walking along a log with his crest out and all fluffed up. They're just gorgeous looking birds. The long-billed corellas, haven't seen them out in the wild. Again, I think they're just in Western Australia, or maybe northwestern Victoria. I'd have to check, but I haven't seen those guys. Quarians or cockatiels, yep. Get them, had a few pets, and we see them wild around here. The male and the female. Galahs, yeah, well, they're probably on my feeding table right now, actually. There's about 4 that hang around here a lot. Almost everyone's seen galahs. Galahs and white cockatoos are 2 of the, maybe corellas as well, but they're two cockatoos that have done extremely well out of land clearing, whereas it's a bad thing for most animals. But being seed eaters, it's been really good for them. So you see lots of galahs around in rural Australia. My story with galahs is I was pretty crazy about them when I was about 8 or 9 or 10 or something, and when we lived in Melbourne, but we didn't have any around there, which really frustrated me. And then in grade 5, we went on a school camp and I drove everyone crazy trying to find galahs. This is in northeastern Victoria. And we, the last day of the camp, eventually saw some. So that would have been the second last day, the last day of activities before we drove back to Melbourne. And I got given a certificate that night by some very frustrated teachers, I think, for finally seeing some galahs. Okay, there's 28 parrots. So it's part of the ringneck complex, which are all considered now to be the one species, and just different races. These guys in Western Australia. But funnily enough, when I was boarding at King's, there were 2 of these that I saw quite frequently in 1984 on the school grounds. So there must have been aviary escapees. That they were definitely the 28 parrots. They had the red notches up there. This poster's faded a little bit. The green's more vibrant on these guys. So I mean, they're from Western Australia, but I actually saw them out of Parramatta, which was kind of intriguing. And so they looked in good condition, so hopefully they're surviving okay out there. King parrots, well, no one ever forgets seeing a king parrot when they first see it. The red is just so vibrant. We get them around here. I know you even get them in Sydney and places like that. They're just gorgeous. So I did put them in my novel. They're a bit of a metaphor in the forest of life. And I think I even had them in Shows So Fair, and they might be in Female Planet as well. I think, but maybe not. Okay, now regent parrots. These are one guys that I've never seen out in the wild. Oh yeah, and these come to my feeding table here a bit as well. They just come and go. I've never seen regent parrots out in the wild, and I'd love to. I've seen them in captivity at Currumbin. Very unusual colours. They'd be great to see. Okay, Port Lincoln parrots, pretty much like the 28 parrot without the red feathers above the nostrils. I haven't seen them. I've probably seen them in captivity, maybe in pet shops. The Mallee ringneck, yes, I have. I've seen them out at Quilpie and at on our way back in Western Queensland just a couple of years ago from Murray-Allen National Park. I gave the kids to try and make it a bit fun for them. I said, okay, first person to see Mallee ringneck parrot gets $5, and we spent about 3 or 4 days out at this national park, and it was just so dry. Any birds that would have been around, they just must have moved on. We didn't see any, but I saw one. So none of the kids got $5 for spotting one, but I saw one. It actually flew over the car as we were driving back, and I just remember looking up at it, and he looked down. And this is what I love about parrots. They're just so intelligent. You can just see and feel the intelligence when they look at you. And that one was just engaging, looking at me as it driving the car, not just a car, looking at the driver of the car as it flew past. Princess parrots, haven't seen them in the wild, but have seen them in captivity. They're quite popular, very beautiful birds, very beautiful. They're from the arid centre. So, the red cap parrots, again, Western Australia, haven't seen them. Superb parrots, I don't even think I've seen them in captivity. Haven't seen them in the wild. So these guys are around central Victoria, southern New South Wales, I think, from memory. So, I'd love to see them in the wild too. I think these guys are getting a little bit rarer now. And then all of the rosellas, and I'm not even sure, different books you read will have them broken up into different kinds of species. And again, this is faded the ink on this a bit. Green rosellas, no, I think they're the Tasmanian ones. Crimson rosellas, yes, and we get them around here, but they're not very common. I've only ever seen them about 4 times or something. More of a mountainous bird. Very striking. You don't forget them either when you see them. I found out the other day that the crimson rosellas from the Bunya Mountains are pretty unusual when they fledge, that they don't go through. Normally rosellas have an immature plumage, the crimson rosellas, where they look a bit green, but those guys, the Bunya Mountains, go straight to their adult plumage straight away, which is interesting. And I wouldn't mind betting the ones around here will do that as well, because we're not too far from the mountains. Pale-headed rosellas, heaps of them around. Very timid, which is a bit unusual. More timid than the other rosellas. But you see them in pairs. There's one, I call him Big Red, who's I think a hybrid between a pale-headed rosella and a crimson rosella. And he's got a lot of red across his back there. He almost looks like an eastern rosella, but not quite. Eastern rosellas, very beautiful birds. I went too far north to get them here. You do get them, I know a spot down near Tenterfield actually where I go for another job, a filming job, and there's heaps of eastern rosellas down there. Very beautiful birds, but I never like seeing them because it always reminded me I was down in southern Australia or southeastern Australia, which I didn't like. So, no offence, but that just really, it always put me off because I liked being up in northern Australia more, and that always reminded me of being down in southern Australia. Adelaide rosellas haven't seen. Northern rosellas, very similar to pale-headed rosella with darker head cap here. I don't think I've seen them, I don't recall it. Yellow rosellas, western rosella, you haven't seen. Western rosellas, seen one of these in a pet shop actually, and they're a lot smaller than the other rosellas. It's really quite interesting. Scaly-breasted lorikeets, heaps of them around, they're all green leeks. You often see them in the company of rainbow lorikeets. Now the red-collared lorikeet, that's actually the first parrot I ever recall seeing when I was a kid in Darwin. I remember seeing about half a dozen of them, a very small flock, fly into a tree. The tree was only about this big, out on the nature walk on a house, and some guy who we knew, I was only a kid, I was probably about 5 or 6 or something, some guy came out to take photos of them. And they're the first parrots I ever recall seeing. And people used to think they were different species to the rainbow lorikeet, but they're just considered a subspecies now. Just the patterning is different around the back of the neck there. Rainbow lorikeets, well, everyone's seen them. They're very common. And part of the reason for that is that they're so aggressive. They're actually quite aggressive birds. And when you have a disturbed environment like an urban area, it favours aggressive species, which they are. And also disturbed environments can favour, or nutrient poor environments as well, can favour generalists, so animals that can eat lots of different things. And we always think of lorikeets as honey eaters, but they've also, rainbow lorikeets, but they've also, or nectar eaters I should say, but they've also been found to eat meat actually, and on my feed table they go there a lot eating seed. Red-winged parrots, very striking birds. I've seen them a few times actually out in the bush. They're quite nice. West of here and south, so they're slightly more of a centre bird, not the arid interior, but not a coastal bird. The Cloncurry parrot, so this is another race of the mallee ringneck, or the ringneck group. These guys, I haven't seen them out in the wild, because I haven't been where they live, but they're beautiful. They're just like a paler version of the mallee ringneck. Really attractive bird. Okay, so if you're still with me this far, coming down to the bottom line now, let me just turn that around like that. Okay. Parrots. Well, I wish. Okay. I got to tell you the story, which was probably at the time it was the happiest day of my life. I think it's only been beaten by getting married and having kids. But when I was at boarding school, I wrote a letter to, I can't even remember who it was now, but the ornithologist at the Australian Museum in Sydney. They had a Norfolk Island kaka specimen, which I wanted to go in and see. And I'd read it wasn't a very good specimen. It was dry and it had actually been preserved in alcohol and then taken out, so it was pretty desiccated and horrible actually. But I still wanted to see it, and the feathers had faded. So anyway, so I went in and saw it, and I got to hold this really dry and bristly, sadly extinct bird. Anyway, I was talking away to them, and I don't know, we must have got on to parrots and night parrots, and I said, "Do you want to see some?" And they opened up a cupboard, and in it was, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 parrots and night parrot specimens. I think they had a few more parrots than the night parrots. And I said, "Can I hold them?" And they said yes. And so I've actually held in my hand the specimens, the carcasses of dead ones, of parrots and night parrots. It was amazing. And Yeah, even in death, they're so beautiful. These guys. It's just tragic that they're most likely extinct. Last confirmed sighting, 1927. There's been some on and off since then, but whether or not they're around, don't know. I did meet someone in the 1980s who told me that he knew someone who had some, but whether or not I should have followed that up, whether or not that was true. People try and hybridize other birds, and I don't know. But anyway, I'd love to. I don't know. It's one of my missions to go looking for these guys. So I've got some plans on that actually. But anyway, because this is the area they would have been in around here too, nesting in termite mounds, and very specific in their breeding and their feeding requirements, which made them very vulnerable, and plus being so beautiful. They're taken for the bird trade. Okay, so hooded parrots. So the paradise hooded and golden-shouldered parrots, our three that nest in termite mounds. These guys up south of Arnhem Land, I think it is, up in the Northern Territory. Haven't seen them. When we were kids in Darwin, we did go down to Catherine, which I think is just west of the range of these guys, so I don't think I even would have had the chance to see them. Mulga parrots, and see, they're smaller than the hooded parrots and mulga parrots. Yes, you get them out on the Western Downs. They're really pretty little birds, actually. All the Cephalus genus, all of these guys. Night parrots, well, no, but it's so exciting that they've been rediscovered and reconfirmed out in the bush and being managed now. I remember it was 1979, I think, when they found a carcass, and that was the first time there was any sign of them since 1911. So I remember being really excited when that happened. The ground parrot, so you've got an eastern and a western ground parrot, and I'm not sure if they're considered different species now. I think some people say they are, some people say they aren't. There are some of these guys up in the national parks just south of Bundaberg, and I've looked at videos on them. They're really cute, the way they just, ground parrots of course, so they just wander around the grass, really quickly around in the grass. So yeah, it'd be good to go up camping up there, see if we can see any. Okay, these red-cheeked parrots, now, you only get them right up on the top of Cape York, but I've actually seen them in New Guinea when I was up there in 2007 filming a documentary about an archaeological dig. There was a palm tree, big coconut palm, just near where the excavation was. And a couple of these guys flew in, and they were so fast, just straight in. And I managed to get a little bit of footage with them because I had the camera with me at the time. And then they took off again. And the word for these guys in the local language is Arti. So these are the Arti. And so this was in the Gulf of Papua, and they extend just down into Cape York. So I haven't seen them in Australia, but in New Guinea. Red rump parrots. So these are the main ones in the Cephalus genus, out of which the other ones evolved according to the latest DNA work. And you get them wild around here. They're quite common out on the downs. These, similar to galahs and white cockatoos, have actually done well with the spread of agriculture. It's a bit more timbered where we are. I think I saw one once, just not far from here. But I had two of these as pets, and about 3 or 4 months ago I was feeding them, and a door on the other side of the cage popped open, and I didn't realise, and they escaped. But the funny thing is, they're still hanging around. Sometimes they come to my feed table. And they're doing quite well actually, which is good. And because they're native to this area, I think they'll survive fine. They haven't been predated upon, which is probably the main threat. So that hasn't happened. Certainly not yet anyway. So, yes, that's just funny. So anyway, there's my two ex-pets, and yeah, I mean, I'm happy for them. They're doing well. So, and all of these in this genus are very sexually dimorphic. So the females are usually quite plain, and the males are the brighter colours. The famous golden-shouldered parrots. When I was a kid, I remember when I was at boarding school, I saw some advertised in the newspaper, $10,000 each. It was in probably about 1982 or 83 or something. These are very rare, endangered up on Cape York. Only, I think, 2 populations left, maybe 2,000 birds altogether at the most. But they are now more widespread in captivity, and I've actually got 2 in my aviary. And they're gorgeous birds, and they're starting to show a bit of interest in the nesting box, so hopefully we'll get some action. The blue bonnets, so they've got them yeah, so these are now relegated to a different genus, not the same as these guys. And there's a whole cluster of about 3 or 4. They're all considered the one species now, just different races. I have seen these out in the wild at Moree. My cousin there years ago shot one because he had a gun and he had to shoot something. But he was a kid, I guess, but still, what's the point? But yeah, no, so I've seen them out in the bush, and yeah, I want to get a few more birds, and I've thought about getting these guys. I actually find them quite attractive, very interesting colouring. Okay, so down the bottom row. Now, swift parrots. There's hardly any migratory birds, migratory parrots. Swift parrots and the orange-bellied parrots are the only 2 migratory parrots in Australia. These guys travel up from Tasmania all the way up to the Toowoomba Range, and there's some birds you see that they're parrots because of the silhouette, and they just fly so fast you've got no chance of actually making out what they are. So I don't know, I could have seen some of them without realising it. But yeah, they're quite attractive birds. They're under a lot of pressure now from logging, and also, believe it or not, from sugar gliders that go into their nests and actually eat their young. So there needs to be really a real concerted effort to preserve these guys, and the federal government hasn't been doing enough in that regard, and generally. Elegant parrots. Now, so this little Neophema complex with the rock parrots, the blue-winged parrots, orange-bellied parrots. These guys are all quite closely related. I've seen these in a pet shop. Never seen them out in the wild. I'd love to see these and the blue-winged or the rock parrot out in the wild. The rock parrot, any parrot that lives in rocks by the seashore, is quite fascinating. I've seen blue-winged parrots in a pet shop. So yeah, haven't seen them in the wild. Burke's parrots, well, they're quite popular in captivity. And a lot of people breed different mutations, which I think I'm not a fan of that at all. I think it's called the Rosa mutation, where they're more kind of pink. I have a feeling that when I did a trip around Central Australia in year 7 at school, I have a feeling that I may have seen them, but I just can't remember them. But anyway, I've certainly seen plenty of them in captivity. The turquoise parrots, so I've seen them out on my auntie's farm near Millmerran, and yeah, you do see them in captivity a bit. Oh, and also down at Girraween National Park, we went camping there long time ago, maybe about 15 years ago or something, and some of these guys were flying along the side of the road when we left. Yeah, quite pretty. They're closely, very reminiscent of the scarlet-chested parrots, scarlet-breasted parrots. Okay, the musk lorikeet. I don't think I've seen them. I'd like to have seen them. Now these fig parrots, they're all blue-browed, red-browed. I think they're all considered one species now. And I have seen these guys only, not in the wild, unfortunately, but at Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary started this year, and they're so cute, this big. Budgies. So these are, of course, the bush budgies, and I've seen them out in Central Australia. Huge flocks, hundreds, and they all wheel and turn at the same time. And you can't really, unless you see them, you don't really get it. Like you can't picture how vibrant the green on their feathers is. It's amazing. And you see hundreds of these all turn almost in unison as they fly around, and never forget seeing a flock of them. I did have 2 bush budgies. There's a movement now to have, because they're so heavily mutated and crossbred, the breeding in captivity is all about kind of getting the weirdest and wildest ones you can, which I think is terrible. I really think that's wrong, but so there's a movement with breeders just to breed bush budgies, so you just keep them in their natural state. And I had 2 of them, and they were an escapee job as well. When we were moving house to come out here, unfortunately, someone was moving the cage. I won't name who, it wasn't me, and the bottom came off, and off they went. And I don't think they would have survived. Most captive birds can't survive if they escape or if they're released, and you should never release captive birds. Most of them don't have the skills to survive. Those red-rump parrots of mine that escaped, because I feed birds here anyway, wild birds, and because they're native to the area, they've got a better chance. Anyway, so we lost our 2 bush budgies. Little lorikeets I have seen. years, 10 years ago or so, 9 years ago, we went to trip around Victoria and went to Ballarat to Sovereign Hill, and in the car park out the front there was a tree with about a dozen of these guys voraciously eating the nectar. Really noisy. Purple crown lorikeets, never seen them, would love to see them. Very, very beautiful little bird. Scarlet breasted parrots, yeah, more Central Australia, haven't seen them. Very beautiful. Varied lorikeets, haven't seen them either. They've got very unusual markings around the face there. Be good to see them in the wild. The orange-bellied parrot, one of our, possibly our most endangered parrot. I mean, it's hard to, because night parrots are so hard to find, we don't really know how many are out there. There may well be more. We know there's not a lot of orange-bellied parrots. I think it's down to a couple of hundred, I think, at the moment, which is quite bad. They migrate across the Tasman, so from Tassie up to Victoria and South Australia and then back, which is a big effort for a little bird. And I don't know too much about their biology. I think they breed in Tasmania and then they migrate across for feeding, I think. Some of them, there is a captive breeding program where they're starting to mix captive bred birds with the wild birds, but there's a big thing with parrots. Sorry, someone's just coming in our driveway here. Just almost finished. There's a big thing with parrots in particular about their learnt behaviour, and a captive male and a wild bred female, they, instead of travelling across Bass Strait, they travelled down to southern Tasmania. They shouldn't have. So anyway, it's about the culture and the behaviour, not just the genetics. But there's a lot of support for the breeding of them, so I'm sure that'll be okay. Okay, so the rock parrots and blue-winged parrots, seen blue-winged parrots in captivity, quite a pretty little bird, and rock parrots, haven't seen them out in the wild. So anyway, there you go. What birds have you seen? So I've just got to go because someone's brought our ride-on mower back on a trailer. But anyway, it was just amazing still having that poster after 40 years. So there it is. If you've seen anything that I haven't seen, tell me about it. I'd be quite interested to hear about it. Okay, cool. Thank you.